So at the time, the barrier to entry to starting CollegeHumor, starting any website, was simply learning how to make a website, to write HTML and make things work on a web page, which at the time was a skill that wasn't widely distributed. There weren't the software tools like there are now to just make it very easy. So that was something when we got started around 99 or 2000, a long time ago, we were able to do when others weren't. We started seeing that it became scalable when links to the site started getting passed around and people would share them with their friends, and it kept growing without our needing to put any more additional effort into it. When you are at a growing company that is agile and has to adapt and change very quickly, at a big company, you take lessons from a startup and apply them. So being able to iterate very quickly, being able to launch a new project and give yourself honest feedback about what's working and what's not, and move from there. And I actually think that DNA of a startup is still, I see that at my current job as well, that kind of move fast, iterate, be able to course correct as you go and make sure you get it right. I think in terms of marketing and brand identity, the first thing to remember is that your brand is kind of everything, and this is something that it took me a while to learn. Like, you're going to get offers to do all kinds of various side projects with the brand or co-brands, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, especially as business and technology evolves, the one thing that is consistent is your brand, especially a media company where how your content is delivered to your customer is going to change, but the one thing that hopefully won't is your brand, and the steadier and more consistent that is, the better. And in terms of marketing, I think the thing that I've learned is you want to make it as clear as possible what you do, and don't focus too much on the name of the company. An example that I've used before when trying to think of names for things, like I always think, at some point there were some guys thinking of a band name, and somebody said, "What about Coldplay?" And at the time, they were like, "Coldplay? That doesn't even make any sense." But now we don't even think about it. Like, that's just the name. And I think if you think of a lot of names, like whether it's like Airbnb, like at the time people would be like, "That's a terrible name. How do you even spell it?" So I think people obsess too much over name and not like brand identity. So I would lean more towards brand identity than like, what are we going to call this thing? Because what your brand identity is will eventually overtake whatever name you happen to choose. Doing new things and having impact on the scale that we have the privilege to do, a global scale with a lot of people using the platform, a lot of people in the community, and being able to try out new ideas with that level of potential impact. So I think that's what keeps me motivated, this kind of startup culture within a big culture. I cannot anticipate my future path. I think that anybody who thinks they can is probably overconfident or just wrong. And I think and I guess another way to think about that is, if you can think about your future path and you're right, you're probably not taking enough risk. Or maybe you just have a personality that just likes consistency, and that's fine too. But I think for people with kind of an entrepreneurial bent, you never know what's going to be next or what idea is going to excite you. My biggest piece of advice for a student entrepreneur would be around focus and trying to do one thing well and making that one thing be your wedge, your differentiator, and as to like what your product does that is different. If I had two pieces of advice, it would be like make sure there's some sort of barrier to entry to what you do. And I think if you can do something well and defensively, you'll have a good business. And people try to overcomplicate entrepreneurship and business and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's like, do you do something well that people want, and is it defensible? And if so, you'll probably be successful.